Hey, and welcome to the notes on severe weather. This topic is definitely a very fascinating one, obviously, because we just stand in awe and look at this type of weather. There are amazing things that happen, and sometimes they cause loss of life, of course. So, we're going to talk about the characteristics of severe weather systems and how to actually prepare for them, because you definitely want to be prepared for them, because, again, loss of life, loss of property is a big concern. Okay, so what types of severe weather are there? So number one, you have thunderstorms. Okay, so we tend to see those quite often in our area, especially during the summertime. And some of them, I remember in the past few years, we had a pretty severe thunderstorm that actually did some major damage to our trees in our area. Really fascinating. You probably can find YouTube videos on it. But basically there were a lot of lightning strikes or a lot of wind damage from that storm. And you can also have hail and tornadoes along with that. Snowstorms, blizzards, we have these occasionally, not as much as upstate New York. So if you do go to school in college in the future, upstate New York, you will definitely encounter a lot of those. Hurricanes, we do have those. We've had Sandy. And that definitely is one of the ones that lives on in our mind. There also was Katrina down in the south. So there's definitely some significant hurricanes we've had in the past years. And tornadoes, less frequent here, but the middle part of the country, they call it Tornado Alley, tends to get the most tornadoes in the country. All right, so what are thunderstorms? So thunderstorms form when warm air rises quickly. And what is going to cause that to happen is cold air coming in quickly and forcing the warm air upward. And as a result, rising air forms clouds and you get heavy rain. And one of the characteristics of the actual thunderstorm, you see this anvil shape. Okay, this anvil shape is an indicator of thunderstorms forming. So when the meteorologists are looking for that, they look for this exact rising column of air, of warm air, and they see this shape to the clouds, and that's how they can predict that a heavy thunderstorm may be coming. Air condenses, causing heavy rain. So when air condenses, clouds form. These occur along cold fronts, because again, that cold air coming in forces the warm air up quickly, and you end up getting a thunderstorm. They can have lightning, hail. Hail is actually ice balls, and what happens, the water droplets that are supposed to be falling in the cloud actually get caught in what's called an updraft, and they actually get brought upward back in the cloud. And you know, as you get higher up in the atmosphere, it gets cold, so it freezes, and then it will come back down again, and it might actually get caught in the updraft again and then get another layer of water and get bigger and bigger. And if it keeps doing this, the biggest ones we've seen are softball size, all right, which can do some major damage. I remember seeing softball size, not softball size around here, but I've seen golf ball sized around here. So definitely can get pretty big. They can do major damage to especially cars and windows if they hit in the right direction. Okay, so thunderstorms, again, cold air moves inward quickly, forces the warm air upward, and the storm will move forward. And usually it's a pretty quick thing. Thunderstorms are usually in and out within an hour or two. But generally, heavy rain in storms, that's what's characteristic of them. So again, that warm air getting forced upward, cold air descending in, and you get heavy rain. All right, tornadoes. These are pretty scary. These are columns of air that are rotating rapidly, hundreds of miles per hour, sometimes 300 and something miles per hour, which are the strongest. The center part of the country, right in this area, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota, this is known as Tornado Alley. This whole area gets hit by tornadoes, especially in the early springtime. It will shift a little bit eastward to some of the other states during the summertime, but in general, it's where cold air rapidly meets warm air. So severe thunderstorms, which are the stronger ones, you tend to see these. So Midwest U.S. sees a lot of these because the cold air from the north meets the warm air from the Gulf of Mexico, which is a maritime tropical, and that's what ends up causing these tornadoes. Occur where warm and cold air meet rapidly. So again, the cold air from the north is continental polar, maritime tropical from the south, and they meet in the middle of the country. Okay, so here's a quick little explanation of it. So the warm, moist air flows out of the bottom of a cumulonimbus cloud. Those are those dark clouds you guys know as thunder clouds. And the warm air moves upward, and low pressure areas form outside the cloud. So what happens, the warm air actually will rise naturally. Some of it actually will get stuck underneath. Cold air will actually get stuck on top of warm air, and they'll start rotating in a column to try to get back to the way they want. And as they rotate, you get turbulent air, and it all actually starts spinning in a circle. And the tornado forms when the funnel comes down to the ground. Okay, and it will touch down. There can be funnel clouds, which aren't quite tornadoes yet. You'll see the rotating air up here, but it may not make it to the ground. Okay, and there is what's called the Fujita Scale. This is the older one. The next one, the new one, is called the Enhanced Fujita Scale, which just quantifies the damage a little differently. But overall, F0 are the smaller ones. Those are typical with severe thunderstorms. You can see some tree damage. Trees can actually get pulled out of the ground. Chimneys can get damaged. Branches will be damaged. And then F1, it starts getting stronger. Okay, so now you start seeing things getting overturned because we're getting up to the 100 mile per hour mark. And then above 100 miles per hour, 113 or more, is 157 is F2. So this is where you start seeing major damage starting. F3, F4, F5. F5s are the strongest that we know, which are around 300 miles per hour spinning in a circle. Those can actually tear apart a house in seconds. You can actually pick up a house and throw it too. So those are the ones you definitely don't want to be in your house in. You want to be underground somewhere. Otherwise, you're going to be in for a lot of trouble. So tornadoes are very dangerous, and we'll talk more about those in a moment. All right, lastly, hurricanes. These are tropical cyclones, storms that moving in a counterclockwise direction. Most storms in the northern hemisphere rotate counterclockwise, as you guys know. They form over warm water, so you need warm water. So that's why these are frequent in the summer or fall season when we have the water super warm, because it takes a while for the water to warm up around us. Okay, winds are it's actually 74 miles per hour or greater. So 75 is usually where we see a hurricane forming. They tend to move along the east coast of the United States and then go out to sea eventually. Some of them will actually go into the Gulf of Mexico and hit the Gulf Coast. Okay, but in general, the East Coast is the target of many of these storms. In the Caribbean, of course, as you guys know. And most damage occurs due to winds and flooding. Flooding actually is an overlooked thing. Obviously, with Katrina, with New Orleans, that was a major part of the damage from that storm. And then same thing even with Sandy. Our coastal areas definitely got flooded pretty readily, and that's why many of the houses got damaged during the storm. Okay, hurricanes, how do they form? So warm, moist air rises, and it's multiple areas where this is happening, and then there's going to be air sinking next to it. And actually it'll go towards the top of the hurricane, and then it will go outward. So in the middle, the winds are coming inward. On the top, it's going outward to restore the air. And what happens, The cool, dry air sinks in the eye, and the eye is actually the calmest part of the hurricane. It's really the eye wall, which is the edge of the eye, where you see the greatest wind speeds. And you see multiple convection currents. So you have warm air rising, cold air sinking throughout everywhere in the storm. That's why there's so much cloud formation, so much heavy rain, winds, because of all this rising and sinking air that's happening in these hurricanes. Okay, and we have a Saffir-Simpson scale is the name of the hurricane scale. It's category 1 through 5. If it hasn't reached a hurricane classification yet, they call them tropical depressions, which are the beginnings of it. And then tropical storm is just below a hurricane, which can be pretty significant still. And then finally, category 1 through 5. Obviously, the higher the number, the more damage typically. However, Sandy, actually, believe it or not, didn't get higher than a category 2, even though that caused major damage in our area. So category scale isn't always an indicator of how much damage and money will be lost from damage. We found that out as time went on. Katrina was more like a 4 or 5. It actually didn't quite make it to a 5. It was actually a 4 and then weakened down to a 3 when it hit land. But Sandy was a 2. So doesn't matter. No matter what, hurricanes are damaging and can cause loss of life no matter what. All right, now, if you move upstate or go to school upstate, this is going to definitely affect you. So lake effect snow. So cold, dry air will come from Canada, that continental polar, and the winds will come over the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes are pretty large lakes. So this air here that comes down, it will pick up moisture from the lakes and force it to areas like Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse. So if you go to school up there, what happens overnight, big snowstorms can form. So cold, dry air gains the humidity over the large lakes. The winds move the cold, humid air towards the land, and heavy snow can occur. So we can get blanketed with snow in this area, and it could be not inches overnight, but feet overnight. Could you imagine waking up and seeing 10 feet of snow overnight? And that can happen. All right, so there's some crazy snowstorms they get up here. All right, and lastly, I want to talk about preparation for these. So hurricanes, stocking up on supplies, food, water, having backup power generators, putting away outside furniture, boarding up windows, evacuating coastal areas, and also the one that always works, have an emergency plan. That's the one I always use. I tell every student that's the one that will work for every severe storm. Tornadoes, you want to move to a basement, and if you don't have a basement, which some people in Florida don't have, a central closet in the home, which is usually a tornado closet. Usually it's lined with concrete blocks, and that's a special place where you can shield yourself from the tornado. Having an emergency plan, like I said, that's a good back pocket answer always for these. And you can also stock up on supplies, always have them in the house somewhere. The only thing is a tornado, if it rips apart your house, it's definitely, I would say, having a meeting place in case of a tornado afterwards. You guys can all meet up at some point and discuss what you're going to do next. Okay, so thunderstorms. Move indoors. If you can't, we'll talk about that. You're going to get as low to the ground as you can, right? Because lightning will strike areas that are high up. So get rid of any metal also, because metal conducts electricity. So if there is any lightning in the area, it'll go through the ground, it'll go through metals very quickly. Close windows in your house. You don't want to let lightning in. If in a field, remove metal objects. Do not handle metal objects because, again, they're conductors. Stay low to the ground. Stay away from trees or tall standing objects. They tend to get struck in lightning storms. So you want to stay away from those. And cars are actually a good place to be. And it's not because of the rubber on the tires. It's actually because you're surrounded by a metal cage. and that metal cage will conduct the electricity around you, and then it will go to the ground. So it never touches you. It actually goes through the metal cage of the car to the ground and out. And that's why you're very safe in that in a car. And that's it for severe weather. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I will post some videos showing you some of the Katrina damage and whatnot, which are going to be